When you spend years trying to be seen by someone who claims to love you, it changes you in quiet ways. My name's Daniel, and for most of my marriage, I believed love was about patience. I thought if I gave enough, listened enough, stayed gentle enough, she'd eventually meet me halfway. Emma wasn't cruel. Not at first. She was just distant in a way that was hard to name. The kind of distance that doesn't shout. It hums quietly in the background of every moment. A glance that lingers too long on her phone. A sigh when I walk into the room. A shoulder that turns slightly away in bed. In the beginning, I tried to fix it. I planned dinners, left notes on the counter, bought her favorite wine, even suggested therapy. Every attempt felt like throwing pebbles at a wall that wouldn't crack. She'd smile politely, thank me for trying so hard, then retreat into silence again. I started keeping track, unintentionally at first. The nights she said she was tired. The mornings she left before I woke up. The days we passed each other like strangers. I tell myself this is just a phase, but the phase became our life. Every night I reached out, hoping to find warmth. She'd roll to the edge of the bed. "I'm not in the mood," she'd whisper. Sometimes she wouldn't even bother explaining. Just silence. That silence hurt more than rejection ever could. It's strange how a man can start to beg without realizing he's begging. I'd ask softly, "What's wrong? Did I do something? Can we talk?" Each question met with an eye roll or that same dismissive line. "You're too sensitive, Daniel. Not everything's about you." I began to shrink inside my own home. I'd come home from work and listen for her mood before speaking. Some nights she'd laugh on the phone with her friends, the version of her I hadn't seen in years. But the moment she hung up, she'd slip back into that cold, detached quiet. One evening, I sat across from her at dinner. She scrolled through her phone while I tried to tell her about my day. She didn't look up once, so I stopped mid-sentence. She didn't even notice I'd gone silent. That moment told me more than any argument could have. I stopped trying so hard after that. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. I stopped asking if she was okay. Stopped planning little surprises. Stopped touching her shoulder on my way past the couch. I withdrew the same way she had, piece by piece. For weeks, she didn't react. Maybe she even preferred it that way. But then something unexpected happened. She began to notice. It started subtly. One night, she asked if I'd eaten dinner. I said I had. Her eyes lingered a little longer than usual. The next morning, she asked if I was coming home early. "No," I said simply. That small word seemed to catch her off guard. A week later, she came into the living room and sat beside me, too close for someone who hadn't touched me in months. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Everything okay?" I looked at her for a moment, unsure how to answer, because, for the first time in years, I actually was okay. She reached for my hand, but I didn't move. Her face shifted, something between confusion and fear. That was the first time I saw her truly rattled. And that's when it began. The unraveling neither of us expected. The next few days felt oddly peaceful. I'd stopped walking on eggshells, stopped chasing her attention like a starving man begging for crumbs. For the first time in years, I didn't check my phone to see if she'd texted. I didn't plan conversations in my head to avoid arguments. I simply existed. Emma didn't know what to do with the silence I left behind. She'd come into the kitchen and find me making coffee, quiet and calm. She'd linger there, pretending to look for something in the fridge. Then she'd say, "You're being distant lately." I almost laughed at that. Distant? After years of being invisible, she finally felt the cold she'd built. One Friday night, she came into our bedroom wearing that same perfume she used to wear when things were good. She sat beside me on the bed, her tone lighter than it had been in months. "Do you want to watch something together?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked, and realized something had shifted. She wasn't doing this out of love. It was control. She wasn't comfortable with me being okay without her. My silence had taken her power away. "No," I said quietly. "I'm going to read." The shock on her face almost made me pity her. Almost. Over the next few weeks, she started trying again. Small touches, sudden questions about my day, cooking dinner the way I liked it. But by then, it all felt like theater. She wasn't reconnecting. She was performing. One night, I came home late from work, and she was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed. "Where were you?" "I told you I had a meeting." "With who?" "My boss." She studied me for a long moment. "You didn't use to work this late." I shrugged. "You didn't use to care." Her eyes flashed, the mask cracking just a little. "Don't talk to me like that, Daniel." "Like what?" "Honestly." That word, honestly, hung in the air like a confession. Because honesty was something she hadn't offered in a long time. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. Not because everything was fixed, but because I'd stopped pretending that it could be. A few days later, she came to me, tears in her eyes. "I don't know what's happening to us," she said. "I feel like I'm losing you." I wanted to tell her that she'd lost me long before this moment. That every rejection, every dismissive look, every night she turned away had chipped at something inside me until there was nothing left to hold on to. Instead, I just said, "You pushed me away for years. I finally stopped fighting you." She covered her face with her hands and started crying. Real tears this time. Not the kind that come from guilt, but the kind that come from realization. The truth had finally caught up with her. For a while, I watched her cry, and part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her like I always had. But the other part, the part that had been silent and aching for too long, knew this was the closure I'd been chasing. The next morning, I packed a small bag. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam doors or make speeches. I just left. 2 weeks later, she sent a message. "I miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I spent years begging for connection, Emma. You refused." The day I stopped, you noticed, but it was already too late. I never heard from her again. People think heartbreak happens in the explosion, the cheating, the fights, the final goodbye. But the truth is, it happens quietly over time in all the moments when one person stops showing up. I begged her for connection every day. She refused every time. And when I finally stopped asking, she finally realized what she'd lost. But by then, the silence wasn't punishment. It was peace.